A game that has consistently been one of my favorite games I've ever played is Dig Dug, which somebody has once said is one of the most random picks they've ever seen in somebody's favorite games list. But, you know, I think it's fun. I will admit that I have a nostalgic bias for it. I've been playing it for most of my life ever since I discovered it on Namco Museum while playing my Game Boy Advance SP. Ever since then, it's basically been my go-to game for car rides, and when I saw that it was on sale on the PlayStation Store, I was obviously going to buy it. It felt like an offering just for me, which I guess makes me a mindless consumer easily able to fall into a company's traps, but it's Dig Dug, so I don't really care. Being an arcade game, your goal is to get as much points as possible. But for old arcade games, this is actually one of the most complicated and interesting ones you'll ever see. There are two types of enemies, Puka and Fygar. Puka only chases you, but Fygar can shoot fire to the side, which is dangerous, but you get twice as many points if you kill Fygar from the side as a result. Their fire can actually go through thin walls, but so can your pumps, so that's fine. And yes, you do attack using an air pump, which... Who came up with this? I love it. It's not just there because the game's creators and players joined to inflation. It actually makes sense from a gameplay perspective because then enemies, as you leave them alone, will deflate back to normal size if you don't want to kill them at a certain moment. Which obviously wouldn't make sense if the protagonist had a gun. I do find it weird, however, that you're actually able to pass through enemies that are inflated because isn't the whole point that they're getting larger? Like, shouldn't they be taking up room in the tunnel so you can't pass them? The enemies can move around in the tunnels that you dig, but unlike you, they can also just dig through the ground on their own without making any tunnels. So while you're limited to walking around on this grid, they aren't. But don't fret, you can use rocks to stop yourself from getting overwhelmed, as they can also kill enemies. They can also kill you, but they also kill enemies, and you can get a lot of points for crushing enemies with them. In addition, dropping 2 rocks will make a food that you can eat appear in the middle of the stage for bonus points. Also, the deeper into the map that an enemy is when you kill it, the more points you get. And the last enemy will always try to run away, so you're losing points as they run. Small, unnecessary, but funny details like that, and the fact that the music stops if you don't move, just make it clear that the people who made this game really cared. And yes, I know that the eyes on the character sprites aren't filled in, which means that technically every character in this game has 2 holes burned in their head where their eyes should be, but I don't know, I think that's funny. It makes sense to me that the creators of the game wouldn't want it to be the one that's shut down in Wreck-It Ralph and would instead make it just that Q*bert's the one shut down in Wreck-It Ralph, because Q*bert is a terrible game, fuck Q*bert. Not in that way!
Come on, everybody, take a chance. We're going underground to do the dig dug dance.